Welcome to Module 7, which is all about upleveling identity. I am so excited that you're in this module because this is the start of Phase 3, which is all about self-ownership. And this really just takes that self-love and that self-control to the next level. And this might be like one of my favorite parts because this is where things get just really fun and you get to explore and really start to see things kind of shift a little more. So, not that you haven't been seeing that already, but but this is something I love. This is what's been very much a hobby for me, is just up-leveling my identity, being more of who I choose to be. And so I'm very, very excited to share this with you because this is where you get to just come home to yourself and have confidence in who you are. And that is something that is massively, massively powerful. Okay, so I'm going to stop gushing. As always, I get very excited at the beginning of these modules. But okay, let's talk about up-leveling identity. And so where that starts is there's kind of a few ways in which we can up-level our identity. So I want to talk about those first. You can basically up-level your current identity, your pursuit of identity, and your relationship with your identity. So let's kind of break these apart a little bit, step by step, so you can understand exactly what I mean by each of them. So up-leveling your current identity, this is going to get tongue twistery to say, but up-leveling your current identity is basically just having more acceptance, more pride, more appreciation for parts of yourself that maybe you haven't always been the most comfortable with or the most confident with. And so, up-leveling our identity isn't always about just massively overhauling or changing who we are, right? Up-leveling identity can a lot of times be bringing out the things within ourselves that we've kind of maybe tucked away for a really long time. And for me, those things have looked like a lot of actually the passions and things that I loved when the B.A.D really came into my life and kind of sucked all of that away. So things like owning, my witchiness and love of magic, and owning that I love to dance and to sing and to write and those kinds of things. So it's things that have kind of always been a part of me, but that I pushed down for a very, very long time and was able to finally allow to come back up. So you can up-level, your current identity. You can also up-level your pursuit of identity. And so that's basically deciding, okay, there's like this aspect of myself that I don't really feel I already am. And so I want to pursue that, and I want to be that, and I want to be more of that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with doing this. Becoming a coach is something I wanted to pursue, and becoming a really health conscious leader and business owner is something I wanted to pursue. I didn't want to, I don't want to be doing the hustle and the grind. I want to make sure my mental health is at the forefront of everything I do. Also, being a really kind and authentic person is something that I wasn't really a part of me before, and is something that I was very intentional about creating. So we can have this pursuit of identity that might be like outside of ourselves that we can then go towards, right? And then lastly, of course, is our relationship with our identity. And this is kind of a given with both, but it's, how do we associate with certain things? How do we what's the relationship that we have with our identity? And this might seem silly, it might not, but for me, for a long time, I had kind of this shame around being super white, and in the sense of like being very pale and not having a lot of color in my skin. And it was something I was very self-conscious around and had literally been made fun of for. Like, you wouldn't think that would be a thing, being a white woman, but that was something I didn't have a good relationship with, that piece of my identity. And it seems very strange, especially looking at it now, but it was very much a thing. And so there are parts of ourselves that we can, again, and so that was me, right, up-leveling my current identity and my relationship with that identity. So you can kind of see how this has different layers, and it's all something that you can explore. And the way that you do those things, the way that you up-level each of those, and of course there's a framework coming at the end, but it really is a lot of acceptance, intention, reflection, and courage. Right? So you have that acceptance of who you are or who you're becoming, that intention of becoming more of that, the reflection of, am I staying true to that? Am I, being aligned with that? And also the courage to show up fully in that. That's very much the process of up-leveling the identity. And fear is something we are going to talk about in the last module, but this can be something that feels a little scary. But what I always want you to come back home to is that, when you're making these changes, whether it's in your current identity or pursuit of identity or your relationship with your identity, right? The thing I always want you to come home to is, am I doing this from a place of love, or am I doing this from a place of fear or lack? Right? Or trying to meet somebody else's standards. So I feel like no matter what it is that you're doing, if you're coming from this place of genuine love, of I want to, up-level this part of my identity because I'll feel more like myself, or it will make me feel more expansive, or that'll be exciting, and I'm like looking forward to that change. I think that's a really good place to come from. If you're coming from, oh, I need to change myself so this person will like me more, or so that I will be more accepted, or because if I'm not that person, I can't be X, Y, and Z because I have to fit that mold, right? So those are not reasons to up-level your identity in a certain way. I truly, truly believe that. So, be mindful of where, that desire is coming from, and make sure that it's something that you want and you don't just think you want because other people want it. Okay, so when it comes to up-leveling identity, you choose what's possible, what to challenge, what to change, and what to double down on. I can't tell you where to grow and what to challenge. This is always an interesting topic for me, especially as I've become just more aware and mindful of other people's stories and perspectives and life experiences. I can't tell you what's off limits to when it comes to your identity, because for me, you could say like, oh, well, you can't change this because clearly like science or whatever. But for me, if I hadn't challenged my identity of having bipolar anxiety and depression, if I hadn't said, no, I don't accept that, I don't see that, it doesn't feel aligned as that's who I am. If I hadn't challenged that, even though every doctor, every person told me it was a part of who I was, genetically, chemically, right? If I didn't challenge that, I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. So that's where there is a part of me that's like, who am I to say what you challenge and what you don't? I trust that you will know what to do in that. And the same thing goes when I look at people that have been thought to think that, maybe a woman is supposed to love a man when, that woman loves a woman or that man loves a man, or, and challenging that and being like, I want to up-level this part of my identity because this doesn't feel aligned to me. Same thing with gender identity, how you identify, and or if, being non-binary, all of these things, this is where it's so important that you listen to yourself and you decide what's possible. You decide what to challenge. You decide what to change, and you decide what to double down on. What is you? What are you? Sorry. But you understand what I'm saying, okay? And that's where these journal prompts are going to be very helpful. Because this is where the self-reflection is very powerful as well. So again, I can't give you those answers. I think it's very important that you explore them for yourself, and that even if everybody has told you, no, that's not something you can change, you determine if it's something you can change or not. Because I know me personally, I am always blown away by stories of people who are like these like miracles, when really it's simply because they chose, and it, like these stories that I told you about in the last module, owning opportunity, like those blow me away, and it's because they chose how they, what their identity was and their relationship with their identity. So those are kind of the things I want you to stew on and to think about, right? And the other thing is I want you to also see change as a healthy thing. We're constantly growing, constantly evolving, and I think, a lot of times, a lot of people are hiccups. A lot of people are demeaned or shunned or looked down upon when they make a change. Like, oh, you used to believe that and now you believe this. Well, are you a liar? Can I trust you? Yada yada. Like, it's just kind of nonsense when you think about it like that. Like, I don't wear the same clothes I wore when I was 5. Like, I've changed. My style's changed. The way I've talked has changed. Like, my body shape has changed. So many things have changed. And my identity has up-leveled. And I don't want you to associate this kind of change, especially intentional change, with being something that's wrong. It's a very healthy thing, and when we lean into it, it just helps us grow that much quicker and with that much more ease. This stuff doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be complicated. A lot of people say, oh, it's hard. Oh, it's a lot of work. But I truly think that that's based on your belief and your perception of things. And if you want to see something as not being hard, then don't see it as being hard. Again, I think that's also can be ingrained as part of your identity. Like, that's how I like to see the world. So whenever I have somebody tell me, like, this is really great work, but it's really hard work, I'm like, well, that's your opinion. Like, maybe it's work, but I don't want to see it as hard. Otherwise, that's not very fun for me. But that's just how I roll. So something I want to chat about really quick, because I think inevitably it's going to come up, is navigating external reactions to change. So how other people are going to perceive your change. And this is by no means an exhaustive list. There's so many ways people can react. But I think it's a good thing to have awareness of, because then you'll kind of know how to approach it, and again, be responsive versus reactive. So the first one I want to cover is like the intense one, which is like shame, where it's like literally people shaming you for like, how could you change? This isn't you. Like, you were better before, like whatever it is. They're just, it's this constant shaming of your growth. And, in that kind of situation, you really have to kind of recognize that, like, maybe they're just that scared of change, that is their problem that they need to work through if they're not comfortable with how you're growing and changing and up-leveling. And that might be a person that you have to make some mental or physical space from, and be really intentional about how you respond versus how you react to them. Because it can be very easy to go into like shutdown or defense mode, and we don't want to do that simply because somebody else is uncomfortable. So, if somebody's meeting you with that, just stay in your zone and just be like, I know this is me. Again, this can be an invitation and opportunity to be like, yep, I'm settling into me. Like, if that's a problem with you, then maybe we can have a conversation about that. And if you can't have a conversation, then maybe we can just... Another one is that they don't see the change. And this happens a lot with people who are beating the bad. And they're like, they feel like they're doing so much growth, so much improvement. They're changing. They're more positive. They're more upbeat. But other people aren't recognizing it and aren't seeing it. It doesn't mean that you're not doing it and it's not happening. But a lot of times people need to see like this dramatic wowza change in order for it to register. So it may take time for people to see that. And you could also, show them examples of like, oh, this is how I am changing. And also, some people are very cautionary if they don't think the change is going to last. And so it's like a defense mechanism of like, oh, I don't really see anything, because they're like, well, if they go back, like, then my hopes won't be let down or whatever. But, a lot of times it's just seeing that dramatic change. When somebody's like, I lost 3 pounds, you're like, okay. If somebody's like, I lost 100 pounds, you're like, okay. But change is happening regardless, and it's all just as good, whether it's 3 pounds or 100 pounds. That's just an example and a metaphor, but you get what I'm saying. Another one is that they bring up the old you. And I see this a lot with like family, or maybe somebody who hasn't seen you in a long time and their main association with you is maybe you from when you were younger. This happens massively. I feel like with my family, I mean, I literally still get gifts that like my teenage self would ask for, but not me today would ask for. and it's, that's just something where they're just going to need repetition to not relate to who you were as so often, and this too is an invitation for you to just remind yourself to, love yourself and appreciate yourself. Ooh, phones. And, lean into that acceptance, even if they aren't really acknowledging the growth that you've achieved. And then lastly, you hope that like somebody's just gonna be like, yes, I celebrate your change. And there will be people that do that. And they're just like, good for you. This is amazing. I'm so proud of you. Yada, yada. Woohoo. We're going to celebrate this. Make sure you take that in and don't go, oh, but I haven't changed enough. Oh, but this. No, just take that in. Receive that compliment and be like, thank you. Celebrate me. I celebrate me. You celebrate me. We celebrate me. Okay, that's what we can do. So, it's just a few ways to navigate that, those external reactions to your change. Now, what I do want you to be very, very aware of is that with an identity up level, it will involve loss. And we talked about this in the very first module, Forgive and Face Forward, that, as you grow, you lose things. When I really practiced being hiccups, when I really practiced being a more kind and generous person, I had to let go of the wall up, guard protected Olivia that would just like brush things off and make the rude comments and not care about what anybody thought and, really just kind of like shove people away. And so, when you become more of one thing, you inevitably have to become less of another thing. It's not a bad thing. Again, remember, change is healthy, but just have that awareness that it involves loss. And sometimes, it feels uncomfortable, that middle transition period. It can feel uncomfortable. And so, just having the awareness of it can make it almost so much more easy. I find having awareness of these processes that happen make it easier for me because I can see, it just feels uncomfortable and awkward because I'm in the transition of gaining something and losing something else. I'm not settled yet. It's like being in the middle of a move. Like everything's in a box and it feels kind of weird, but eventually I'm going to get there and I'm going to unpack and stay for a while. So, just having that at the forefront of your mind can be very, very beneficial. Now, something I'm very excited to talk to you about is multi-level embodiment. That's what I like to call it because it's fancy and it sounds fun. But this is basically how to have, confidence in your identity, right? Or in different parts of your identity. And so when you look at multi-level embodiment, it's basically you kind of assessing, and this will be in the workbook as well, so don't, worry about it too much, but it's basically assessing like, okay, in order to feel confident in this identity, what are the things that I believe? What are the thoughts that I would have? What are the actions that I would take? What are the ways that I would feel, right? And when you start to break it down on multiple levels like this, you get to embody it even more. And so let's say I want to be, like for me, it's, I'm trying to think of a good example. So for me, something that I repressed for a very long time and had a lot of trauma around was, you've maybe heard me talk about my like witchiness and identifying as a witch. And it was something I was very uncomfortable with because a lot of people don't understand it, or they have their associations with it, or their assumptions or stereotypes around it. And for me, it's simply just a form of belief where I get to be a co-creator in change in myself, in the world, and I get to do that through different modalities, whether it's objects or, energy, things like that. That's what it is to me. And it's different for everyone. Like literally right now, if I don't burn myself, like I got like spell witchy stuff going on right now. So that's what's up. And, through that candle and ingredients in that candle. So, when I decided that I was going to stop repressing that part of myself and accept it more. I asked myself, I'm like, what are my beliefs around that? And again, this is where I was like, okay, energy and co-creating change, those are my beliefs around it. What kind of thoughts would I have? Not like being shameful of them and just being like, yep, that's how I think. And articulating, like, so actions could be, I would communicate those thoughts and I'd be clear and I'd be vocal and not, be trying to like downplay it or like be like, oh, well, it's not really a thing. If I'm confident in that, then I'm going to communicate about it. I'm going to have candles and a pentacle ring on my finger and not worry about it. And the feelings that I would have would be free and openness and ease and peace and just feeling settled into myself and being, like ready to answer questions that people have. Those kinds of things. So that's kind of that multi-level embodiment where you get to see things on different levels. So I'm not just thinking, oh, I'm a witch, but then, I'm like over here like, but I feel weird about it and I'm going to put this away because I don't want somebody to see it. We don't want to like have that miscommunication within ourselves. Confidence comes from that multi-level embodiment. And it's a good thing to practice. It's not something you just like turn on like a switch. I mean, maybe it is. If it is, cool. But it's something that you practice and you put effort into, and it may not always be perfect. At first, it was really uncomfortable. I had a hard time even like saying like, I'm doing like a candle magic over here, like to my husband. Like it was very uncomfortable, and it's something you just continue to practice. And then people start to just accept, okay, yeah, that's just her. That's just that person. And lastly, before we get into the framework and running through that really quickly, I want you to be well aware that identities are multifaceted. You're not just one thing. You're not just turn this one thing on, turn this one thing off. Identities are multifaceted. I want you to think of yourself like a diamond, and that's super cheesy and I get it, but like do it. And sometimes, we're like, it's always changing. Maybe we're creating new facets or buffing off old ones so that they can shine a little brighter, right? Or not old ones, but like ones that aren't really shiny. But like for me, we can sit here and label all these parts. It's all these different labels and pieces of our identities that we have, and it can go on and on. Funny, outgoing, then these are things for me, like funny, outgoing, crafty, I'm a mom, I'm a yogi, I'm a nerd, I'm an author, I'm a podcaster, a mental health coach, I'm, a straight, cis, white, female, brunette. It could be all these things. And so these are all pieces of our identity that we get to own and love and show fully all of the time. I'm never trying to hide my kids or pretend like I'm not married, right? I'm never trying to do that when I'm in another setting. Like you get all of me pretty much all of the time. And I think that is something and maybe that's why you were drawn to do this program, is because that is confidence and that is authenticity when we show up fully in ourselves and we don't try to hide pieces of ourselves or dull certain parts of the diamond so that somebody will think it's pretty enough or worthy enough, or have enough value, right? You get all of me. I'm always shining bright. And it's something, I continue to see how much brighter I can shine by making new facets and dusting off not as shiny ones. And that's what you get to do as well. And when we do that, we get to live more fully in who we want to be and in ownership of who we are. And that's a really incredible thing to be able to do. And you do that through, applying the tools that you've learned, whether it's tackling triggers or embracing your health or nurturing your, your self-love and forgiving things. Like it's all those things put into practice with your own personal growth. And it's incredible. So I hope that you do that. Let's go ahead and walk through the framework really quick so you have it nice and condensed for you. So, and this of course will be in the workbook along with the journal prompts and actionable steps, all that good stuff. So the framework is multi-level embodiment. And we're going to do multi, that's what we're going to be breaking down. So M is mindful meaning, okay? So when it comes to your identity and up-leveling your identity, what are you making it mean? Or what do you want to make it mean? And what I mean by that is, for instance, I was talking about identifying as a witch, and to me that used to mean embarrassment and secrecy and weirdness and unaccepted. That's what those things used to mean, because it was something that I was poked at constantly. Like I was like some weird piece of goop that people wanted to figure out how it worked. I was very much bullied. I had people trying to convert me and telling me that they didn't want me to go to hell. Like all of the things, just not accepting of who I was. And so what it meant to me was very constrictive and contracting. And what I decided to make it mean was something expansive. I made it mean freedom and uniqueness and faith and coming home to myself. That's what I made it mean. So be mindful of the meaning. Okay, that's the first step. The second is U, which is understanding changes. So, is it acceptance changes? Is it different changes? When it comes to, are you up-leveling your current identity, your pursuit of identity, or your relationship with your identity? Understanding what kind of change you're going in to work on. And then moving into L, which is living changes. So living those changes and putting them into practice. I encourage you to do this around different people, different situations, different settings and experiences. I mean, literally, for me, sometimes it's one thing to practice it by yourself. That's amazing. It's wonderful. It's another to then, for me to go and practice, being in my identity around my husband, around my kids, around my friends, around my family. And it might be something that kind of tests you. And I know I've had a couple of times where I would be around my family and I was like after the experience, I was like, oh my gosh, I literally feel like I reverted back to my teenage self. And I wasn't being who I wanted to be in that situation. And that's an opportunity, right? To then go, okay, well, how could I be a little more intentional with showing up as who I am the next time I meet with them, and making that into a game and into practice and into, that kind of experience for yourself. So mindful meaning, understanding changes, living changes, and then T for trust, okay? So again, practicing being at peace with your identity and all the facets of your identity, right? Not needing to defend them or to justify them, but simply being in them and allowing people to accept you simply because you accept yourself. And of course, that may not always be the case. We talked about, we can't control other people, but, if somebody's trying to attack a part of your identity, can you just be at peace with it and know that even though that's their opinion, it's not necessarily truth, and trusting in who you are and who you choose to be, right? And then I is to integrate. So accepting each of these different facets as part of the whole and living all of them as fully as you can, and not feeling like you have to, shine one and hide another. Sometimes some will be brighter depending on whichever way it turns. Like right now, I'm very much more so a mental health coach than I am a mother or a wife, right? But it doesn't mean that I'm not going to talk about those things or I'm going to try to hide them or erase them. So, integrate accepting all of those pieces as part of your identity. So that is it for the framework. Please make sure you go and do the workbook. I always just beg you to do the workbook. Especially with this one, though, it's going to be very, very valuable for you to explore these things and figure out what it is for you that you want to up-level and want to work on. And then once you get through the workbook, of course, since this video is going to be done, module number 8 is going to be unlocked, and that is going to be all about connecting with others. And that one is a beautiful step in a really beautiful direction. So it's going to blow your mind. Can't wait to see you in there.